Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2024 Stellar Society lecture. The Stellar Society is Guilford Tech's Student Astronomy Club. They've been around for more than 15 years, and their mission is to support the public outreach programs of our Klein Observatory here on campus. And so early on in their existence, they decided to do that. They wanted to actually donate some of their club funds to make observatory events happen. And they got the idea that maybe they could help us bring an extra speaker in every year. And so that's how this particular lecture is essentially came into being. We always have our fall Joe Klein Memorial Lecture. We have some talks associated with our TriStar event. Occasionally we have other events during the year, but the Stellar Society Lecture is now been around for more than a dozen years. And typically it's in the spring, usually in April, associated with the North Carolina Science Festival. But this year we wanted to, because of some scheduling issues and the fact that International Dark Sky Week is basically the first week of April, we wanted to have this talk before that happened rather than after that happened. And so we took the lecture out of the North Carolina Science Festival and are having it a month early this year. We do have some NCSF events happening here on campus in April. On Friday, April 5th, it's the statewide star party. So around the state, there are lots of places that are offering viewing events that weekend. I think the Greensboro Science Center is one of those sites. I see Roger over there. But there are probably 30 or 40 of those sites around the state. We're one of them. We're open every Friday night if it's clear. Of course, tonight you brought rain with you, so we won't be observing after the talk. But come back and see us on another Friday night and look through our telescopes. But April 5th is sort of a special event. We'll have some activities. We'll have a lot going on. Statewide Star Party. And then you might have heard there's another special astronomical event happening on April 8th. Anybody know what I'm talking about? So the solar eclipse, whose line of totality runs from Texas to Maine across the U.S., hopefully many of you are going to get into the shadow of the moon, and I wish you good weather there. I'll be staying behind here in Greensboro. We're going to do an eclipse viewing event in the parking lot right up the hill here. So if you're going to be here in town and want to see the partial eclipse, it'll be quite significantly obscured at mid-eclipse. That afternoon between about 1:30 and 4:30, we'll have telescopes set up and viewing devices. So come out and join us to watch the eclipse if you're not going elsewhere. Then on Friday, the 19th of April, we have our annual North Carolina Science Festival event, the Science Hall Open House. And so over in Science Hall, where we have geology, physics, chemistry, and astronomy, all of our labs will be open. We'll bring the biologists over with us, and we'll have an evening of just hands-on science fun, where you can go from lab to lab and actually do lots of fun things. There'll be a lot of demonstrations. It's a family-friendly event, so if you know any kids that are really interested in science, bring them over. That's Friday, the 19th of April. And I should say, since we are we're having this eclipse coming up, the observatory actually has, and Kelly's got a couple here, solar eclipse glasses and viewers, little cards, that we're making available for your donation of $2. We will give you one, and it's got the Klein Observatory on there and reminds you that we're open on Friday nights. So out in the lobby after the talk, Kelly will be there and you can get as many as you want. We have lots of glasses, okay? So we also have information at our light pollution table, the North Carolina section of Dark Sky International and the southeastern section of Dark Sky International called Starry Skies South have a table in the lobby with some handouts about light pollution, some of the very things you'll be hearing about in this talk. So you can take some of those things away. There's a way that you can participate in a real citizen science project called Globe at Night, where you basically just wander around at various places and look up in the sky and report how many stars you see. And there's a nice little web app you can report on your phone, and that data goes into the database, and they've been collecting it for many years, and it's being used in real science to talk about how our skies are changing with time. And so I'm sure Dan's going to tell us about that during his talk about what's been going on as the way we light our landscapes has changed. But you can help gather data on that and be part of the science. So I should say, again, no observing tonight after the talk. We're going to be rainy, but perhaps next Friday will work out. So come back and see us. So now let's turn things over to our speaker. I've known Dan Caton for decades now. We were reminiscing before the talk about when we first bumped into each other, which was actually around 1990. And very early on in the decade of the 90s, we ended up in several special meetings about light pollution because both of us were involved in the earliest days of the International Dark Sky Association. And Dan has really been an advocate for good lighting and for dark skies. For many years, he's written articles for some of our regional newspapers addressing the issue. He serves on the Compass Committee of the American Astronomical Society, which is a special committee that's looking into dealing with light pollution, all of Elon Musk's satellites that are crawling around over your heads, radio interference. You know, astronomers have to deal with all of this happening above your heads. And it's not just people who can't see the stars anymore. People are having more and more trouble doing real research because there's lots of interference here. And so since Dan's been working on that kind of research and activities for many decades, he's really about the best person in North Carolina to give this talk. And so we thought, since Dark Sky Week is coming up, we should have him come and give sort of a state of the skies talk and give you some information about what's going on and what maybe some potential solutions are. And so let me turn things over to Dan and let him share his talk with us.
Thank you. Can you hear this? Maybe not. Can you hear me now? Is that good? Good enough? All right. Maybe I need to move them. It's not a talk unless you have tech failure. I don't know. I might need some assistance here. How about that? Is that good? Is that loud enough? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Tom, for inviting me, and for the Stellar Society for inviting me. As Tom said, we've been working on this together for decades, and we've sort of had a resurgence in the last year and a half with more activity in our dark sky chapter in North Carolina. And so I got a bunch of logos on there. I'm a member of the AAS, American Astronomical Society, and we've had a committee dealing with light pollution I've been on for probably 10 years or something like that. It used to be called the Committee on Light Pollution, Radio Interference, and Space Debris, but that set of words violated a fundamental rule in science, and particularly in NASA. You have to have a pronounceable acronym. And so you couldn't pronounce literally. And so, but we could remember what that was. So we rebranded ourselves as Compass, and none of us for a while could remember what Compass stood for. And that's the Committee for the Protection of Astronomy and the Space Environment. And so it's still the same things, but we're rebranded. As Dark Sky International, we used to be the International Dark Sky Association, and several months ago they rebranded as Dark Sky International. And I'm also a member of the Illuminating Engineering Society. I'm not a lighting engineer, but I like to keep up with what those guys are doing. And so I've been a member of that group. That's the ANSI standards group for lighting in the US. So there's a lot of things up there, and there we are. So what we're going to discuss, I'm going to spend a little bit of time. My first hour, I'm going to spend on the basics of light pollution. I'm going to assume you know nothing, and if you know more than that, then great. My second hour, the problem with LEDs, and then finally the threat of internet satellite constellations. So one warning, I will ruin the nightscape for some of you. That's my intention. I want you to, after tonight, look around and say, look at that crappy lighting. I want you to be offended by what you will see in generally the entire US, particularly the East US. You won't find such bad lighting in a few places like Flagstaff, Arizona, and Tucson, near the observatories there. But generally, I'm going to ruin the nightscape for you, and that's my goal. But the flip side of that is I don't mean to offend anybody. So if there's some business people here and you have a business or some other institution or some facility here or nearby, your lighting was probably not professionally designed. I was saddened to hear when I attended a webinar run by the Dark Sky International. Prior to that webinar, I was hoping to build a list of designers in the US, in the North Carolina, that I could refer people to so that we could have better professionally designed lighting in our state. And he said in one slide that was very discouraging, only 4% of commercial projects are professionally designed. And the rest are specified with landscape architects, salespeople, distributors. Architects in general aren't very well trained. And so professional lighting, qualified lighting designers are not involved in it. So if I found a list, they'll be doing 4% of the projects. That doesn't work. So you're innocent. You inherited probably bad lighting. You can change it though. So the basic problem is sky glow. Light from fixtures reflect off the night sky, and we call that sky glow. Large cities are visible from tens of miles. I imagine Greensboro's visible from 20 to 30 miles, driving in towards it from an interstate. There used to be a sodium vapor light orange glow, and maybe we're tending towards a bluer LED glow now. There's still a lot of sodium vapor lighting out there though. And so the stars are not brighter in the country. The sky's darker. It's a contrast issue. At Apple, we used to have a retired doctor come up and teach medical physics once a year, and he lived in Atlanta. He called me up one time from Atlanta and said, gosh, why is the sky so dark here in Atlanta? What? I had to think about it. And I realized, well, yeah, you're outside looking at glaring lights that are shutting down the iris of your eyes, so everything is darker. If you'll notice, the stars are also darker. So the glare can kind of fool you. But if you're out away from glare, the contrast of the sky is what reveals the stars. My first concern was our own Dark Sky Observatory. It's off the Blue Ridge Parkway, about 20 miles from Boone. It's a research facility for astronomers and our students. We also do public nights. We just do them once a month. Our next one is tomorrow night. I got a busy weekend. And so I'm hoping that this weather clears, and it's supposed to start clearing out there around 8. So we're probably going to go for it. Just to let you know what I do, and I'm not going to spend much time on it. My own study is eclipsing binary stars. So about half of all stars are found in orbiting pairs, unlike the singleton sun. And for a bunch of those, we happen to line up in the orbital plane, and one star eclipses the other, and then the other eclipses the one. They're also far away. They look like one dot of light, but you plot the brightness over time, and you get a light curve, and then you use a computer program to model it, and entering the parameters of the system. This is about the only way we get the sizes of stars Yeah, you can look at Betelgeuse with Hubble and James Webb and maybe a few large telescopes on the ground using active optics, and you can get kind of a fuzzy disk. That's about it, but it's a giant star and it's nearby. Not so much for other stars. And so a couple of collaborators come in from Georgia and Kentucky, and we do 4-night runs. We were going to do one the 15th, the 18th this month, and well, the weather didn't cooperate. And then I fill in extra data. And we observe our systems in 4 different colored filters because scientific quality cameras cost like $35,000 and they're black and white. What? Well, you can't calibrate a color camera chip, really. If you really tore apart your phone and put it under a microscope and look at your camera detector, you'll find each pixel is an array of pixels with little tiny color filters in front of them. And the calibrating that would be impossible. So we take data in 4 different colors: blue, visual, which is green, red, and infrared, because color is temperature dependent. We'll come back to color and temperature in a bit. So that's what I do, just for a little background. But it's not just a problem for us professional astronomers. And I used to be an amateur. I was an amateur in junior high and then high school, and then I turned pro in college. But there's probably about 100,000 amateurs in the US. So for these people, these things, and most of these scopes in this particular scene are, I think, are home built. These are their bass boats. This is their hobby, although one of these probably doesn't cost but a fraction of the motor of a bass boat. But anyway, so this is what they do, and they love it, and it's fun. And that bottom is Mid-Atlantic Star Party. Used to meet at Robbins. I don't know where they meet now. And it's important for society. I mean, the stars are just in our literature and our music. And I've often wondered and said it 50 times and nobody's picked up and ball and run with it. It'd be an interesting maybe dissertation or thesis in music history to see whether references to the sky have tapered off or disappeared with light pollution and with people going indoors and looking at their phone. In fact, this is a typical person outside. They're totally disconnected from their environment. And on my campus, they've got AirPods in. They're completely disconnected from where they are. They're somewhere else. In fact, being a scientist, I want to know where they are. And I'm going to pass out a form in the next couple of weeks to my intro astronomy class of 70 students to say, what are you doing? What are you looking at when you're walking around like this? I want to know. But you're disconnected from the sky and nature, and at night is just as bad. So we need to protect that. The global problem, there's lots of images like this you can find online of maps of the whole world, and of course we see that there are areas that are unpopulated: Sahara, Central South America, over here, even our own desert Southwest, desert West is mostly unpopulated. Sadly, I don't know if it's still around, but there used to be an entire journal in geography devoted to the study of this signal. I want to take their data away from them. They would study population trends based on the lighting. Here is the US, and you can find your favorite place and trace your way around. Let's see what would be good. Here is Phoenix, Arizona, bright, no real light ordinance. Here's Tucson. They've had a lighting ordinance for probably 50 years. And so, you know, that can be effective. And you can see where people live, and you can see that most people live very close to the coast, which gets thrown into the climate change and sea rise problem. What's wrong with this picture? Anything wrong with it? Oh, yeah. There's a big blackout there on this date. And so many people in this area of the country, what happened was a power system went down, and most of the US, or much of the US, except for those crazy rebellious independent Texans, are on a national electric grid. The Texans refused to join this for some reason. But anyway, one generating station went down, the others try to pick up the load, and it's too much, and that trips others, and then it just cascades till you have a widespread blackout. During that time, many people in that area probably saw the stars for the first time. Let's see, August, probably saw the Milky Way. So the summer Milky Way. So, and I've been told by people who take kids from the inner cities of California, like LA, take them out to the east, in the desert area for a night camping. They have to tell them what they're going to see, or they'll be afraid. Really, they'll be afraid of a sky full of stars. You have to social engineer it before you go. So that's a sad comment. Here's our own state. We're about in here at the Dark Sky Observatory, and you're over here, right? I can't see. Yeah, Greensboro, High Point. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So, you can follow your interstates and see your development through the state. There's some dark areas in our area, and there's some dark areas on the coast. I've never been personally impressed with the ones on the coast because I'm here in the summer at the beach, and there's a high humidity haze. Here's Boone, shot from more than 50 years ago now, by the former ASU photographer from the fire tower and the lights of Boone. I need to color correct that. That's from an old slide he gave me. And then I took a slide too long ago now, maybe 25 years ago, of Boone. And this is the light. There's a few stars trying to compete. That's our stadium. With the old lighting, which was less, we had to relight it when ESPN rolled into town, and we didn't have enough light for a night game. And I need to take this again because it's probably a lot worse. Who is this light meant for? All these views of lights from above that we've seen, none of those photons of light were meant for my camera or the camera of the satellite. It wasn't intent to light up the bellies of birds and planes and satellites. This is all wasted light. We will waste a few $1 billion a year in the US in excess light that's simply going up. And plus there's a parallel fossil fuel consumption and pollution that goes along with that excess. So where does it come from? Poor fixture design, lack of shielding, overlighting, what I call the crime dog McGruff approach. Well, if a little light's good, a lot of light's better. No, better lighting is better. Better application of the light, not just more light. Indeed, you can often lower the amount of light. A current related item that I'll forget, so I'll say it now before I forget, is a problem. I'll talk about the replacement of streetlights with LED streetlights, but a side issue there is the utilities are simply taking out a 50-watt bulb sodium vapor and putting a 50-watt LED. They're not saving any power, but there's a lot more light coming out of that LED picture. So they're not saving more money, and they're making more light that we don't need. So overlighting by them. Poor installation. For a long time, the IDA, which is now the DSI, would not put their rubber stamp of approval on a picture because it could be mounted wrong. They've apparently relented on that. Market pressure used to be companies that come into town, find your old gas station, convenience store or whatever, take pictures, jack them up a light in Photoshop, say, we can make you look like this. So there's light wars at intersections with multiple gas stations, convenience stores. So there's all kinds of things going on. Here's one of the worst examples, floodlights. These are pointed almost horizontal. There's no shielding. An example at night in Boone, This was our McDonald's several years ago, lit by cheap floodlights on pre-existing poles, because that's the cheapest thing to do, probably leased from our power company, which embarrassingly the university owns. And so, you know, look at the glare. The glare is shutting down the camera settings, all automatic, an older digital camera. It just had to shut down for that glare. Speaking of glare, more glare is not, I mean, more light is not better vision. That's a famous pair of pictures taken by George Fleener, a guy who's in the Sarasota area, astronomer guy. And, you know, you can't even see the perpetrator there because of the glare of that fixture, and he blocks that, and you can see now. So glare is a safety hazard. So better things are full cutoff fixtures, so-called shoebox design. They put all their light below their horizon. And why do you think they're chosen by designers or builders? Because they want to protect the night sky? No, because the picture looks better in the daytime. This is prettier than that big metal thing. But we'll take that. At night, so this is what Boone's McDonald's looks like after I helped Boone pass a lighting ordinance, and they replaced those with full cutoff fixtures, and has some facade lighting that's regulated. I don't care. I've never measured that facade lighting. Give me the 99% of the problem. I'll let you have that. You know, that's my opinion. And one thing you can always notice about good lighting like this is, since you don't have the glare of the actual lamps, you see the poles. It's a way to recognize good lighting is your eyes are not shutting down and you can see the lit up poles. Whoops. These are Cobra headlights used as street lights. They're typically pretty bad. The filament is below the horizon. Maybe 30% of the light goes up. So-called Cobra head. Better versions of full cutoff. I noticed the lighting fixtures out in the parking lot here look like they're LED full cutoffs. One nice thing about LEDs is they're generally full cutoff. There's some bad things about them we'll look at in a minute. Dusk to dawn fixtures. It's a question whether they're a provide security, or are they a lighthouse saying to a ne'er-do-well coming through, hey, I'm over here. You know, if you live out in the country and you have one of those, some perpetrator driving by wouldn't know that you're there, your home is there, if you didn't have this lighthouse. There was a meta-study, probably 20 years ago now, study of studies that looked at the effects of such lighting on crime, and they could not tell whether it helped or hurt, whether it helped provide security or it provided light for the burglar. It was not clear. So the refractor lens there, the jelly bowl thing at the bottom, is very glaring. Frequent light trespass and neighbor problem. When someone buys it, puts it on their own house. How many people have been bothered by such a light? Yep, the hands always go up. If you don't have an ordinance, you can't do anything about it. And residential lighting control ordinances are really touch and go. That's property rights kind of thing. So like our Boone ordinance is only commercial. It doesn't protect from somebody putting up something like this. And they're installed by amateurs and utilities. Sometimes there's not much difference. Small utilities may not have a real lighting expert. Here's a private security light. I love this one. This is north of Deep Gap off of 421 on 194 in east of Boone. So somebody bought an old gas station. There was the old, where they used to have the pumps and the gull wings that had fluorescent tubes in them, the long dead, and they put their own light up there. I noticed the gull wings stop the light from where you want it. They block it from the ground, but they light up your bedroom. So maybe not so good. Here's a current issue that I mentioned. Towns are converting to LEDs. for street lights. I got an email from a cold call email from somebody in Boone who lived on Woodlawn Drive, and I went out and looked at this and took some data. She was just uncomfortable with this new fixture, and she really couldn't say why. That's why. LEDs, the physics of LEDs gives you a blue spike unless you do something about it. And so this is a huge part of the problem. Your eyes are assaulted by blue light. Think about those blue headlights coming at you. Blue light and night don't mix. And so this is a particularly hot spectrum, color temperature of 3,700 Kelvin. And some are using 4,000 K, which is close enough to this to be the same, or even 5,000 K lights. And by the way, I took this spectrum with a little device, A-Sense spectrometer. It talks to my phone with an app over Bluetooth, and it hands you this and lots of data. So that's where I got this spectrum. Here's the problem. During the day, your color sensitivity curve of your eye, the response of your eye is centered at about 550 nanometers, 5,500 angstroms. That's in the green. That's also I wish I could add it to this, but that's also the center peak of the radiation of the sun. So whether you're going to invoke God or evolution, your eyes better see light that's there to be seen. It'd be great if you could see in the X-rays, but it's just the sun doesn't putting out a significant amount of X-rays, so it would be useful to have that vision. So eyes, which have actually evolved more than 10 times, I think, independently in nature, center on what's to be seen. So that's where our peak is in the daytime, and here's the dark line is the spectrum of a blue-rich LED. At night, our sensitivity shifts over here, right where that blue spike is. That's why those blue headlights assault your eyes. You just don't like it, and why that lady living in Woodlawn Drive was just uncomfortable with that lighting. I tried to intervene. I went through the city. I was too late. They bought about 280 of those, and they're going to install them. The good news is recent evidence shows that these LEDs are not lasting the predicted 20 years, more like 10. And it's mainly the, what do they call that? It's the driver, the electronics that powers them is dying. So maybe we'll have another opportunity to replace these. Interaction of light pollution and health. Baby sea turtles are attracted to street lights, like that guy there. This is a trench dug to help the turtles find their way out. I took this at Carolina Beach, one of my favorite beaches, long time ago. The Pleasure Island Sea Turtle Project people cruise the beach early summer in their ATVs. They're the only one allowed out there on ATVs, looking for where mom has crawled up out of the water, paddled out a hole, laid 50 to 100 eggs, paddled in, says, "Goodbye, kids, I'm gone, I'm out of here. I'm just gone, good luck." And so when they find them in the morning, they stake them out, put signs on, they're federally protected at that point. And then a couple months later, the nest boils, as they call it over there. And they sleep out here in chairs as that approaches to make sure things go right. They dig a trench sometimes to kind of guide them to the water, slot car style. And but that light can attract them. If they didn't have that, they might head that way. They head for the foamy white surf at night, and they're looking for light. I actually called up Bob Henderson at Progress Energy, which has since then merged with Duke Power, and I asked him if he could turn this light around as a public access road. They just took it out. There's enough ambient light. You didn't need that. So that was good. So nature needs some protection. Thousands of birds die, if not more. I don't know what the numbers are, every year running into buildings at night. During migration periods now, we have a lot of communities volunteering to shut off their lights on tall buildings during the migration season to save birds' lives. What else? Moths and birds are confused by lights. Birds will often circle around at night around a light till they just get exhausted and they essentially, that's it, they die. A recent article I read that moths are confused and they like want to guide by the starlight and they get all turned around and confused and can't do their thing. So it affects a lot of nature. I couldn't find a photo at the last minute, but there are photos you can find out there of soybean fields next to a highway that has street lights with LEDs, blue-rich LEDs. And the areas around those street lights are green long after the soybeans have been harvested and they're all brown. And these guys are limping on quite green. So it's wrecking their rhythm, their seasonal rhythm. So it can keep them growing when they should go away. For people, it's cancer and melatonin. So it's been about 30 or more years ago, somebody noticed that blind women have a lower incidence of breast cancer than women with normal sight. Why is that? Well, we had to find out, right? That's science. And so the work was done. Lab rats died in the cause. And what was found was the blind women's bodies don't know it's day. So melatonin is a hormone your body starts making 9, 10 p.m. You start getting drowsy and you go to sleep. And so their bodies are always making melatonin. And then it was found that melatonin is a key antioxidant in the cancer production cycle. And so screwing around with your melatonin levels is just not a good idea. So we have to worry about blue light and our daily rhythm of life. Well, some people have already figured this out a long time ago. So your devices. If you have an iPhone, there's something called night shift. If you haven't done it, here's a homework assignment. There's going to be homework. Yes. It's a homework assignment. Figure out your night shift function on your phone and turn it on. You can set when it comes on. You can set how warm it looks. It doesn't turn the phone into a red beast. It's something that set modestly, you won't even notice it. Unless it displays certain pure blue things and they'll look a little weird. If you have an Android, there's nightlight. If you have Windows, Microsoft figured this out too a long time ago. There's nightlight. You can search for that. You won't get past NI and it'll hand you nightlight. And I'm not an Apple, other than my phone, I'm not an Apple user, but I also has that built in for Macs. So there's solutions, and these people have known about it, and they did something about it. So you need to turn this on all your devices. You don't want to look at that bright, suddenly lit up phone at 2 a.m. when it pops up and you wake up or something. Not good. Your production is, melatonin production is over for a while. Here's some new technology, phosphor converted amber bulbs. So these look like an ordinary light bulb. Although my engineering friends tell me these are called lamps. Bulbs are something you plant in the garden. So these lamps, these actually have an LED inside, so you get the efficiency LED, but the envelope is coated with a phosphor that absorbs that blue spike and re-emits it in the yellow. So I took a spectrum one in my own home, and you can see that blue spike's about gone. So it has a very warm, incandescent light feel, which is nice. They're a little pricey. I think they're about $20 for a pair on Amazon, but they're really nice. And so, indeed, don't forget your indoor lighting. You know, you worry about light pollution outside, and then you're replacing your lights with LEDs. Probably have blue-rich spectra. Almost all lamps sold now, the package has the color temperature on it. So you can look for that as a good starting point. You want low, below 3,000. These are really good. 2,300K is what the Dark Sky International really wants us to head toward. Certainly below 3,000. 3,000 or lower. And so look for that. So this lighting of hotel facades is more than just annoying. So you have these blackout curtains because they've lit your wall. It can be unhealthy. A comment about sports lighting: it can be done poorly with lots of light pollution, light trespass, but it can be done pretty well. This is a ball field lit with light control package lights, and you see it's just lighting here, it's not lighting the neighborhood. And again, you can see the poles. Here's a tennis court, beautifully lit. Modern sports lighting can be done very well. One of the companies that does it so well is Musco. Their top line on this, I think they still light all the NASCAR tracks. Costs about well, back when they told me about it at a talk 20 years ago, it was $1 million a mile to light a NASCAR track. So the drivers aren't blinded, and the spectators aren't blinded, and everything works. They can light ball fields where you don't have any light trespass into the neighborhood. And it protects the sky as well. I mean, look at these pictures. They're beautiful. So you can do it right. Gas station canopies are infamous. This one's, I think, about 65-foot candles. Compared to this one's 6-foot candles. After we passed the ordinance in Boone, we had to grandfather in all the junk lighting politically. That's what you have to do. Can't make everybody change their lighting. But that's okay, because big businesses time out, big boxes time out 10 to 15 years. And small businesses can renovate, and they have to come up to code. So it used to be if you renovated to 10% of the value of a property in Boone, you had to come up to the new standard. They found that was a little egregious for small businesses, so they raised that to 25%. But still, they had to come down. The gas station canopies were the only ones in the ordinance that had a sunset provision, 7 long years to come down to 30-foot candles. And they did. This one is 6. I took some students around. They ran out of the van and measured things and came back and said, 6. What, 6? Go back and measure it. They measured again, 6. Okay. So I snuck in on my own later, same equipment, 6-foot candles. Your eyes just open up. Everything works. You know, lower the light, your eyes can open up. And if they didn't, we would have all been eaten by saber-toothed tigers. We wouldn't be here if we didn't have a wide dynamic range of vision. So the lower thing works. Here's some foot candle numbers, just to give you a feeling for this crazy unit that was based on the light of a candle at 1 foot. But recently I went back and noticed they relit with LEDs. And I measure it, and it's nowhere near 6. It's above the 30, and I've got to call the town. And I think a lot of stations are doing that. So a la the power companies relighting their street lights and putting in the same wattage, but now it's an LED. So it's 5-6 times brighter. So they're doing the same problem. Here's the other threat that we're going to center on tonight. Internet satellite constellations, by dumb happenstance, independently. People here picked from a little brochure the same image I had in my slide set. So this is actually a famous picture of the tracks of satellites launched by SpaceX to provide internet. And so these streaks go through the sky. How many people have seen these? Yeah, it's getting more and more common to have seen them. I've seen them once on my own. Well, with my eye, naked eye. But with my telescope work, I've seen them a lot. So modern astronomy research, you're not at the observatory much anymore. You're at home. You connect remotely. You open up. You do everything remotely. And my observatory here, engineer here, Lee Hawkins. Hey, Lee. keeps all that working for us. Um, and so we're not there. And by the way, the telescope doesn't poke out of the dome. I see that reemerge in a current McDonald's ad. Oh, God. Anyway, so we're at home, we're connected, and I've got a room in my house. We call it the computer room. It's our computer room library. And there's a computer running with a couple screens up, and I'm running 1 or 2 telescopes some nights remotely, and I'll walk in there, and there's just taking a sequence of those images, those BVRI images, you know, working its way through a light curve. And I'll walk in there and just randomly check the screen, and I'll randomly see this. I didn't used to see it like this. And some of these are really close to my object of interest, and that image will not be measurable. That was last Sunday. It won't damage, it's not bright enough to damage even a large telescope detector chip, but tests have been done, especially by Tony Tyson, using large telescopes. And what it does in a big telescope is it produces alias images. So there's secondary streaks, parallel, due to the electronics. And it's just something that taking it out by software is going to be difficult. We're getting close to the Vera Rubin Observatory opening down in Chile. Big telescope, wide angle, wide view, like 3 degrees of the sky, huge. These are typically like on the order of a 1/10 of a degree or 2/10 of a degree. Massive array of CCDs in the imaging plane. Imaging the whole night repeatedly from Chile. Every 3 nights it'll have done the whole night, again and again. It's going to discover everything that happens, moves, changes, does anything. And here we're setting this up for Vera Rubin. It's really sad. They're going to have to, they get, I don't know, 19 terabytes a night or something. I mean, it's huge. It's like 15 to 20 terabytes a night. It's so big that they can't push it down a glass fiber. I think they're going to truck down hard drives. It's enormous. But how's the software going to recognize that? Take that out, especially if there's aliasing. It's going to be extremely hard to do. So Elon Musk, Starlinks, so he didn't mess up Twitter enough. So he's got to mess this up. He wants 42,000. I think he's permitted for 36 or 42,000. He's got 5,000 or so up there now. These only live about 5 years before they are not working anymore for whatever reason. So they have to deorbit and burn up in the atmosphere. And burning up in the atmosphere doesn't mean it went away. It's new chemicals in the atmosphere, and we're just not even thinking about that yet. Our committee doesn't really do that, but we're talking about it. We're talking about who ought to be doing that. They don't go away. They burn up. So they're going to have to launch about 8,000 a year, forever. How can a business model support that? I don't know how he can afford to do that. And if he gets his Starship working, that almost worked completely a week or 2 ago, after a couple initial failures, that'll be about a launch a week to send those up. Oh, and all that exhaust. All this rocket exhaust. This is something we're discussing, but we're not qualified to pass judgment on, but somebody needs to be looking at what we're doing to our atmosphere with all these launches. Amazon's getting into business with Kuiper project. I think they've launched a couple of test satellites. I think they even piggybacked on SpaceX. There's a company called OneWeb that was born and then it financially died, but it had a permit. So it came back as a zombie company because it was valuable for that permit. And England bought in and somebody else, and OneWeb is back. Others are developing them. So we could be looking at hundreds of thousands of satellites. So this is going to be huge. So I pulled this out of an email in our Compass group the other day. I haven't verified the number myself, but it may have been Jonathan on our committee, Jonathan McDowell. He's quoted he's at Harvard. He's quoted all the time on it. 4% of Starlinks. These are low Earth orbits or above the horizon at any point. So 200 are up now. Once they get to their highest elevation, they're 7th magnitude or so. So you're not going to see those streaks. But still, that's a problem for astronomy. Those streaks you saw were, 7th magnitude streaks. So this is a problem for our committee in all areas. Light pollution, radio interference, because they are sending internet radio waves with internet down and going up. And so they're going over radio observatories. So they are cooperating with us and turning them off at certain primary observatories, but not everywhere. And space debris, as I mentioned, they're going to come down and they're going to run into each other. So let's hope it doesn't go critical in that last thing. There are some models that have it going critical, and one explosion of creating debris that hits others, and suddenly you have a disaster up there. So our committee is completely absorbed by this. We all were vaguely aware that SpaceX was going to launch something. We didn't know. In 2019, suddenly we knew. So to their credit, they've tried some things. They had Dark Sat, where they made the satellite dark. Satellites don't like being dark because they absorb sunlight and overheat. There's only one way to get rid of heat in space, and that's to radiate it away, like the warmth you feel from your fireplace, infrared photons. So that doesn't work. Then they created VisorSat that had visors that blocked the sunlight. But then SpaceX decided they wanted to have their Starlinks talk to each other with lasers. Can't have those visors in the way. So they gave up on that. And their newest thing is dielectric mirror film that will supposedly send the light back where it came from toward the sun. And to their credit, SpaceX is sharing all the technology they develop with the industry. They're not patenting it, but sharing it. So there's a home system, modest bit rates, comparable to like Spectrum. 30 millisecond delay. There's a light time delay, right? Because radio waves travel at the speed of light. It's pretty low, 30 milliseconds, because they're in low Earth orbit, LEO, a term you'll see more and more coming up. Prior to that, you had Hughes and Viasat, which have geostationary satellites. That means they're up at the right height, the so-called Clark belt, where they orbit with a period equal to our rotation. So they're always above us. If you put them up above the US, they're going to rotate. They're going to revolve around us at the same rate we rotate, and they'll always be up there, which is why you can have a home satellite dish and point it up there, and that's going to be fine. The low Earth orbit ones, like Starlink, the dish has to see a couple of different signals and sort it out. I don't know how they do it. These don't track. They're fixed. But the problem with that is a rather low data rate and 600, 700 millisecond latency, almost a second of delay. Any gamers in here? I'm not a gamer. Come on, you can confess. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm not a first-person shooter gamer. I'm not a gamer at all. But I understand a first-person shooter. You have a 1 second delay, you're dead. You can't game on that. So the Starlinks have that advantage. That's a few $100s for equipment, typical price for service. The dish has a warmer to prevent ice, which is a problem with home satellite dishes, but cats like it. So you need to make sure you have a cat shield. But it's the best option compared to DSL or nothing, the so-called last mile problem. Anybody have the last mile problem where you're out in the sticks? Yeah. Yeah, so the internet's, a mile from you, broadband, and you could get it if you want to pay $10,000 as the only customer to have that strung just to you. It's not a good business thing, so they're not going to do it. It does help for some people solve the last mile problem. And so we're not going to stop them, but we hope to work with them to develop darker satellites. This is already up, a few of them, I can't remember how many. It's hard to keep up with this. Blue Walker is going to be a direct, your cell phone straight to the satellite. No cell towers. Just last week, the FCC voted unanimously for a framework of understandings for direct-to-cell services. So the feds have already essentially approved this. They're going to have a public comment period, and our committee will be commenting. These are big. The Starlinks, I don't remember what the latest version is. The first version were about 1 meter by a few meters. So a yard by 10, 15 feet or something. Not tiny, but these are bigger. So that's what they look like. And it's a phased array dish. It's not a parabolic kind of dish. So each one of these little transmitters is synchronized with the ones around it. So the waves going out are a little bit out of phase with each other. They're phased together so that they're as if they're one focused signal. So that's a big thing. How bright are they? Well, here's some data from Stewart Observatory and other sources. That's Rigel's brightness, Denham, Polaris, the North Star. These aren't faint. And I don't remember how many they want. I haven't been able to keep up. So in general, I hope you all have seen this. If not, you should be aware of it. Oh, okay. Dark Sky International, which was IDA when they did this, and the Illuminating Engineering Society of America got together and came up with 5 lighting principles for responsible outdoor lighting. So they're pretty obvious. Use it only if it is needed, clear purpose, targeted, down, no brighter than necessary, controlled, use it only when it's needed, and use warmer colors wherever possible. So these are 5 fundamental things you can strive for to make things better. Your own house and properties, look at your lights. Are you even needed? Can you have a cap, put it on a switch or timer, motion sensor? Motion sensor, burglar doesn't know whether you flipped the switch or was it automatic. They don't know. Put in a lower wattage lamp, not a bulb. Plant a bulb in the garden. Where do you eat out? The restaurants have glaring lights. About half of them in Boone have floodlights. And half chose better lighting. So you can complain. Are there roadside lights bother you as you drive by? You can complain. We have some situations like that in Boone where we have floodlights lighting apartment parking lots right next to Highway 421. And I try to get the town to include some verbiage about that, but they didn't want to wrestle with DOT. So that's highway. This is property they could control, but it's hard to go there. Neighbor problem, like I mentioned, good luck. It's like the worst possible problem. There's no good, most of the time there won't be a good outcome. Sometimes you might have an understanding neighbor. Is there a street light shining in your window at night? You can call up the utility and ask them to do something about it. The old dusk to dawn fixtures, there used to be a product made by Hubble, not the telescope, and a product made by GE Lighting, which used to make all of its lighting down in Hendersonville, and that kind of got sold or something. Neither of those products is available anymore. There's a little shield, metal shield that replaced that. So you can't buy those shields anymore. To their credit, if you ask for a private security light on your pole, Duke will deliver a full cutoff fixture, a roadway kind of fixture. So it's not one of those glaring, dusted on things. You can write letters to your local newspaper, post on social media, teach your friends about it, spoil their view. Yeah, when you're out at night with your friends, say, look at that crappy lighting. Look at the glare. Yeah, spoil their view. And you can spend some time at darksky.org, become more of an expert. If you didn't know anything about lighting before you came tonight, you already know now more than 99% of the people you will encounter. I guarantee it. So you are my disciples. Go forth and educate. It's all an education problem. People just don't know. And you can join our North Carolina chapter of the Dark Sky International. You can develop a local ordinance if you're in a small town in the region. Small towns could start with a Boone code and do pretty well. It's online. You can find it. Unified Development Ordinance, Boone. UDO is a standard term for codes in towns. So in our UDO, there's you have to look for the appearance standards, because that's where lighting comes under. When Boone started, they started with the Apex North Carolina code, and then they invited me in, and I helped them modify it. One thing I actually deleted was, and I haven't been to Apex at night, so I don't know, but anybody been to Apex? Yeah, it's a bedroom community of Chapel Hill, isn't it? Anyway, they supposedly had low pressure sodium, which is very orange, deep orange. And I once went to a Dark Sky Association annual meeting where they took us on a field trip out to a car lot at night, lit by LPS, which is what Tucson required back then. I don't know what they're doing now with LEDs. All the cars were white, gray, or black. You had zero color rendition. To me, that would be ugly, and I would have people hating the ordinance. So I said, let's get rid of that, not do that. It's also unsafe. Convenience store robbery. Oh, he left in a gray car. No. You need, although if you add 10% white light to LPS, you get back color rendition. So it can be done. And if you have a bigger city like Greensboro, you might start with the Dark Sky International Model Lighting Ordinance, which has taken forever to develop and refine. We finally gave up on it and wrote the Boone Code. It was just stagnant and being debated forever. I think Tom was with me at some of those debates. You remember that? I don't know. It just went on forever. I haven't looked at this lately, but one warning is it could be what you call a prescriptive code. So many, you're only allowed so many lumens of light per acre. Okay, fine. Designers can deal with that. Bulbs or lamps are rated lumens. In fact, if you look at the packages on your shelf at Home Depot or Lowe's, they'll have lumens on there. How do you enforce that? How do you measure it? You have to get on a cherry picker and go up and see what the lamp is. So I prefer the Boone Code, which is foot candles of light on the ground, performance based. I can go out in my town with this is more than $100 one, but a $100 light meter, and I can measure it. I am the light cop of Boone, and you're a light cop of your town if you do this, because they don't have people that are necessarily going to do this. So anyway, I'm not sure, but I think the MLO is prescriptive. I can't remember. I know Asheville passed one that was prescriptive, and I wasn't really happy with that. Another thing you do that Tom mentioned is participate in the Globe at Night project, which is a cool project. You go out with an app during certain periods of the year. These monthly periods are times when the moon isn't real bright because you don't want natural light pollution to interfere. And so you look at constellations and tell the faintest star you can see, and you report it on an app. And about a year ago, the results of that appeared in a journal article. Science is a premier science journal in the US. It's the equivalent of the European or the British Nature. So that's the highest quality journal. And this article, using globe at night data, they measured a 10% per year increase in the sky brightness for a decade. So you can contribute to real data, and that project is going on. And I know Connie Walker, who really invented this project, she's on her committee. So sadly enough, is this our destination? Are we going to have to see the stars? Are we going to have to go to certain places? Like to see nature, or we have to go to certain parks? Is that our future? So we used to hold our Dark Sky chapter meeting at Midland's Star Party, and like amateurs, and hold it in the afternoon when they got up, and like nobody would come. Because they were away from their town in Robbins, North Carolina in the dark. And then they're going to go home to their towns and not do anything, not act. That's not good. So we professional astronomers are just as guilty. We go or remotely connect to Kitt Peak, Mauna Kea in Hawaii, Cerro Tololo and other observatories in Chile, or we go there to a dark site and observe, and then we go home to our overlit cities, and we don't do anything. And the fraction of AAS members that are in the Dark Sky International is embarrassingly small. So if we don't do something, eventually all those bubbles of light visible for tens of miles that I started with are going to encroach upon each other and overlap. And you may not have anywhere to go. I remember many years ago in the early days of IDA, Dave Crawford, is he still around? No? I don't know. He had some health problems. He's got to be 90 or something now. He was a Kitt Peak astronomer. He started the IDA, and he would say, what are you going to tell your kids, your grandkids, when they ask, where did the stars go? You saw stars. Where did they go? So we really need to avoid having this our model for being able to see dark skies. So if you're very attentive, you might have noticed the background of the PowerPoint went from a bright sodium vapor, high pressure sodium vapor yellow to dark throughout the presentation. So we're at dark now. So hopefully we can make the glow go away. So you can contact me about questions about North Carolina light pollution. You can join Dark Sky International. You can join our group if you email me. You want to participate in our Zoom meetings. Next one is next Thursday. We meet 1 week after Starry Skies South. They meet on Zoom on the 3rd Thursday of the month. And you can email me, or I'm infamous enough you can just Google Dan Caton. I'm the #1 hit. I'm not sure that's good. You know, I'm just saying it is. I checked it. So any questions? Yeah.
You suggested that a form of action we can use complain. Can you elaborate what means complain? Like how to complain?
Yeah, the question is, how do you complain? You can complain different ways. You can complain to the business about their lighting. A better attack would be to try to get the town to do some general things, an ordinance. So you can, most towns and municipalities, you can online, you can find their contact us page, and you can post there. I want to have a discussion with government people about getting some regulations and start that out.
I'd like to show you this picture later. Convenience store across the street from me put in new lighting. It's those square whoop things, perfectly sideways, just like this.
On the wall?
On their gas station overhang.
Oh, okay. But they're
So,
horizontal?
you can see it for
Yeah.
miles.
Yeah.
And it was lighting up my house. So one time I was at a meeting, our county, not commissioner, our county manager was there, and I asked him about it. He said, call so-and-so. And I called him. They changed the lighting.
Ah,
So you
good.
can,
You can complain.
it's still not perfect. I'll really like to show you the picture.
Yeah, yeah. I'd like to see them.
So, yeah.
To your point about, I was realizing when you did some checking about Starlink and problem with rural internet, last mile. There was actually a substantial amount of funding in the bipartisan infrastructure law that passed a few years ago, some billion.
Yeah.
To provide rural broadband.
Right.
And it'd be interesting to see that there might be, I don't know, look into that, but there might be some kind of partnership way to get private broadband. There's less necessity for.
Right. So the comment, if you can't hear it, he says there's money in the infrastructure bill to bring broadband to the rural areas. And actually, Starlink had a proposal, and they didn't have enough proof that it was going to work, and they didn't get their billion, I think they were asking for. So I don't know what they're doing with expanding that broadband right now. The 2008 financial collapse led to the American Recovery and the other I can't remember Act, which took broadband out to, yeah, it took it out to the hinterland, and they actually came down the road by our observatory, and we got it there, and they came down my road. I live outside of Boone, several miles outside, and they came down my road, and I'll say, I'll take some. They ran 2,000 feet underground, and my property cost me $0. And I've got 500 up, down, symmetrical. But I don't know what the progress is. My colleague Lee Hawkins sees them.
We're slowly getting fiber out my way.
Yeah.
I've been on DSL ever since I moved to that house, and that's the only option other than Starlink, and I refuse to pay that amount of money because I'm not a gamer. I don't need incredibly fast internet. I can still stream Netflix easily enough.
I had, I live just a few miles from here, outside the city limits, and our only option for broadband is cable. And I work from home, engineer, so I work from home, so I have to have broadband. I literally was home one day, saw trucks rolling out in front of my house, pulling cable, knowing exactly what they're doing. I walked out and talked to them. North State running fiber. It's not really now, it's Lumos.
Uh-huh.
It's now pulling fiber to the home. And about 2 months later, I got a card in the mail saying it was available.
Wow. Yeah. Bet you jumped on that.
I cut my bill in half to
Yeah.
start with.
Yeah.
And much better. So,
Yeah. I don't even know how the Starlink model is a good, I'm not a business person, but I can't see how that business model works.
It's a bubble.
I mean, what does a launch cost? Much less the hardware that they're going to have to put 8,000 a year up.
Do you know what percentage of currently orbiting satellites are Starlink now?
Oh, the vast majority. I did not throw that graph in, but I saw that graph. You see when Starlink started launching, and the vast majority of working satellites are Starlinks. I mean, he's got over 5,000 of them. How many weather satellites and phone satellites can there be? You know, and it's going to get, it's going to get worse. So.
Yeah, I think a big Starlink was sold to bring internet to the masses allow service in every country they want to allow service in. They can't just put up a bunch of satellites and have internet in every country. And then the other problem is that they're now finding out is a large number of those people they were claiming they were going to bring internet to can only get internet on Starlink if it's all donated, because there's no, when you make $100 a year, you're not going to be buying a Starlink terminal.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. So it's not as maybe as big a market as they had hoped.
I suspect some of I suspect some of it is driven up, for grants or for other business, write-offs for other business ventures, sort of, backdoor funding this. And like I said, internet, providing base internet service to the poor. They're counting on that $50 a
Yeah.
Yeah.
To go back to your question a few slides ago about, is this our future? If things did continue on the path they are, what's your projection on when stars would no longer be visible?
I don't know. I haven't seen anybody calculate that. Have you seen anything?
Repeat the question.
Huh?
Repeat the question for the video. Repeat the question.
Repeat the question.
Repeat.
Repeat the question. Oh, yeah, so the question was, yeah, I couldn't hear the question about the question. A second order correction. So when will these bubbles overlap to where you can't see the stars? I've not seen anybody calculate that. It'd be interesting to do, but that's not my thing. Seeing the growth of LED street lighting, and the flip side too is they're all full cutoff, but then Duke is already using full cutoff, and DOT is using full cutoff in North Carolina. So, but you're also lighting the ground, and so that reflects back up. So we really need to, in my opinion, control the timing and the use of lights better. I mean, we can do this better than we're doing it. I don't know about you, but I've got these things in the front of my car that light up the road in front of me, and I'm thinking that could catch on, and then you don't need to light every 100 feet of road all night when nobody's there. So, yes?
Hey, Gary. I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. Introduce myself. You're right about the lights.
What now?
The lights. As an electrician myself, you're right about that. About just being for appearance, because throughout my career, I've seen that most electrical companies, businesses, government buildings, and stick buildings, it's all about appearance because it's money driven. They really don't care about saving energy. They don't care about glare. They don't care none of it. It's all because of appearance and it's money driven. So you're right about that.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I've heard from others say that, like the Compass Committee is starting to talk with DOE, but DOE, Department of Energy's, get them to regulate this. But they'll say, we're replacing all that stuff with LEDs, so we're saving energy, but they're not. Like they're installing the same wattage, and we're just getting bokus of light. So we're not saving anything, and the DOE thinks we are. So we're in talks with them trying to, federal regulation is very difficult right now, and with a conservative Congress and everything, it might be hard to get anything passed.
For the past 5 years, I can tell you that in bigger industrial commercial buildings, they used to go from 2 transformers or 2 generators. Now it's up to like 5 to 12 generators per building.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's definitely increasing.
Repeat that for the video. Repeat what he said for the video.
you said they're, in new buildings, they're using 5 to 12, what now? Transformers?
Like, for example, this is
Uh-huh.
a commercial building, right?
Yeah.
So now, in the past 5 years, the transformers and generators are being more installed and to increase energy rather than saving energy.
Okay, so they're increasing the need for transformers and generators. And there are interesting cases where that's the opposite. Like I talked to people at a traveling big time, Elton John class road show, and they used to have to plug into the local transformer, wires that big and now they're all LEDs and they can run a generator that they bring with them. Yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen. So.
Have you ever polled your students to ask them who has seen the Milky Way, or something like that?
I don't know that I have.
So I've done that here.
Okay.
And, we're local in
Yeah.
the Triad. Almost all of my students have never seen it.
What is it? 80% of Americans can't see it from where they live.
I have no
So,
idea it is.
yeah. So, yeah. I remember going to one of those IDA back then annual meetings, and they took us to an outdoor drama as a field trip, sort of like in Boone. It's the Daniel Boone thing. And so I'm in the middle of Tucson, which at the time I think was 250,000 people at this event, and I could see the Milky Way in a city of 250,000 people. But Tucson is an hour from Kitt Peak National Observatory, so they've had lighting ordinances that Dave Crawford started decades and decades ago. Flagstaff is even better. Flagstaff is like the first dark sky city. In fact, I remember one of those meetings I went to, and I used to fly to Phoenix and then rent a car to drive to Tucson because it was about the same price, and then I had a car. And I went to rent my car, and that's where my flight ended, and my old style North Carolina license plate, the number rubbed off. Let me tell you, you ain't gonna rent a car under those conditions. So I had to catch one of these shuttle buses, little buses to ride to Tucson. We got to Tucson in the dark, and I'm like hanging out the window. Where is the bad lighting? There just isn't any. You're just looking around for floodlights and stuff that we have all over. And there just isn't any. They just, you couldn't legally buy one of those barn lights, what we call the dusted on thing. You couldn't legally buy it, and Home Depot couldn't legally sell it there. And so, you can do this. And those are big places, and they did it. So we need to get started and just get it going. Get an ordinance, and big businesses will time out. You put in triggers, business changes hand, changes type, is sold, then that business has to come up to the new standard. And you put in things like that, and all kinds of businesses over a decade or two will have better lighting. Yeah.
Just a comment on that. I lived for 9 years, 12 miles west of Boston. You would think I would never have been able to see the Milky Way. But it really is your iris being shut down, because in the neighborhood I lived, there was very little lighting, and what lighting was there, public lighting, was probably by accident good lighting. And so I could walk into my backyard where I didn't have a direct view of any fixture and see the Milky Way 12 miles west of Boston. So you can find dark places close to these giant bubbles of light, but a big part of it is so that anywhere direction you look while you're dark adapting, you don't see any fixture directly.
Yeah, so speaking of ordinances and legality and whatnot, I'm wondering if SpaceX is doing their dark satellite research out of the goodness of their heart currently, or are they
Doing what? They're doing what now?
the dark that independently, or are there like national or international?
There's no regulation.
No regulation.
In fact, the satellite industry might as well be a Wild West. I mean, it really is it's a Wild West. And a lot of the Wild West isn't US, you know, and so they're just doing that because we've been in contact with them. When it first happened, we were in the pandemic, 2019, and so we were having our meetings by Zoom, and Elon Musk joined a meeting. So, and his high reps came to our presentations at AAS meetings. So I think they're about as sincere as they can be, but they're trying to make money, and you know, if they can get that reflective coating to work, that would be terrific. I envision like a layer of corner cube reflectors. You know what a corner cube reflector is? It's a corner of a cube, and no matter which way a light ray enters, it will go back where it came from. You've got hundreds of them probably on the back of your car. Your reflectors are little corner cubes. So they take your light that hits it and sends it back to you. And so I thought, well, why don't they put a layer of that, and sunlight, no matter where it's come from, it is going back to the sun. So this dielectric thing that they're working on may be similar. I don't know what the physics is, but yeah. But they're you know, I think they're trying, and they are sharing their developments. They're sharing it with other companies. So. Thank you.